The warning lights flashed red across every monitoring station in the Galactic Council's Outer Rim defense network. Something was coming through the dark space between stars, and it didn't match anything in their databases. Technician Yulrock stared. At his screen, tentacles twitching nervously as he tried to make sense of the readings. The object was broadcasting something, crude mathematical sequences that any first-year academy student would recognize. Basic addition, multiplication, prime numbers. It was the kind of thing primitive species sent out when they first discovered radio waves. "Sir, we have an unidentified vessel approaching Sector 7, he reported to Admiral Korvac, who was reviewing patrol reports in his command chair, the Admiral's 4 eyes focused on the display. His species, the Veltar, had been exploring space for over 3,000 years. They'd seen every type of ship design, every form of propulsion system. "This thing shouldn't exist. Analysis," he demanded. "It's using fusion drive technology, sir. Ancient fusion drive. The kind that burns out after a few months of operation." Yulrock's voice carried disbelief. "But according to our sensors, this ship has been traveling for at least 2 years. Admiral..." Korvac moved closer to the display. The vessel was small by galactic standards, barely 800 meters long. Its hull looked like it was made from scrap metal welded together by someone who'd never seen proper starship construction. "Iron and carbon composites," reported another technician. "Some titanium alloys. Sir, this thing would melt under a single." Plasma burst from our smallest patrol craft. The Admiral's mind raced. Was this some kind of trap? The Outer Rim species were always trying new tactics to catch the Council off guard. But this seemed too crude, too obvious. "Where's it heading?" "Direct. Course for the capital system, sir. At current speed, it'll reach the outer defense perimeter in 6 hours. That changed everything. Nothing approached the capital system without proper authorization. The Admiral activated the emergency protocols, sending alerts to every ship in the sector. Within an hour, 12 Council warships surrounded the strange vessel. Each one could have destroyed it 100 times over. They broadcast greetings in every known language: Veltar, Korthani, Zilakian, even the old trade tongues that hadn't been used in centuries. Silence. The ship just kept moving forward. Its primitive fusion drive somehow continuing to function when it should have died years ago. "Scan for life signs," ordered Admiral Korvac. The readings were bizarre. 1,200 life forms, but nothing like they'd ever encountered. These beings had no natural armor, no protective scales or chitin. Their atmospheric requirements were narrow. They needed a specific mixture of gases that would be toxic to most species. "Sir, they're soft," reported the xenobiologist. "No natural weapons. No defensive adaptations. Their bone density is actually lower than most civilized species. How did they survive long enough to develop space travel?" More strange was their apparent fragility. These creatures lived for barely 100 years, a brief flicker compared to the multi-century lifespans common among Council species. Yet somehow, they'd built a ship that could cross interstellar space. Captain Jinwoo Kim stood on the bridge of the Defiant, watching the alien ships position themselves around his vessel. His crew worked quietly at their stations, each one cross-trained in multiple disciplines. On human ships, everyone had to know how to do everyone else's job. It was the only way to survive in the black void between stars. 12 ships, reported. Lieutenant Soyeon Park from the sensor station. Standard encirclement formation. 3 heavy cruisers, 6 destroyers, 3 scout vessels. "Command structure?" asked Captain Kim. "The lead ship has different energy signatures. Bigger fusion core, more complex communication arrays. That's where their admiral is sitting." Kim nodded. He'd been studying these aliens for months during the approach, analyzing their formation patterns, their ship designs, their tactical doctrines. Humans had learned long ago that information was the most powerful weapon in any conflict. "They're hailing us again, sir," reported Communications Officer Taehyun Lee. "Same 17 languages as before." "Let them wait a little longer," Kim replied. "What's their weapons status?" "All ships have powered weapons, but they're not targeting us directly. Standard intimidation posture. They think we're primitives who'll panic at the first show of force." The captain allowed himself a small smile. "Let them think that. Humans had spent centuries being underestimated by their enemies. It usually worked in their favor." Finally, Kim activated the communication system. "This is Captain Kim of the Earth vessel Defiant. We come seeking peaceful contact with the Galactic Council." The response came quickly, transmitted in what their computers had identified as the primary Council trade language. "Unknown vessel, you have entered restricted space. Prepare to be boarded for inspection." Kim studied the tactical display more time. His ship's computers had already calculated firing solutions for every alien vessel, identified their weak points, mapped their likely escape routes. The humans might look primitive, but they'd learned to think 3 steps ahead of everyone else. "Understood, Admiral Korvac," he replied, using the alien commander's name and rank. "We welcome the opportunity to meet our galactic neighbors." The silence that followed told him everything he needed to know. They hadn't expected him to know the Admiral's identity. They definitely hadn't expected him to derive it from simple observation of their formation patterns. This was going to be interesting. Chief Engineer Vorthak had seen every type of starship engine in the galaxy. Quantum cores, antimatter reactors, even experimental dark energy converters used by the most advanced civilizations. Nothing had prepared him for what he found aboard the human vessel. "This is impossible," he muttered, running his scanner over the Defiant's main reactor. His assistant, a young Kothani named Zilep, peered over his shoulder at the readings. "What's wrong, Chief?" "Look at these efficiency ratings. 97% fusion efficiency. The best our ships can manage is 85%, and that's with quantum-assisted plasma containment." Vorthak's 4 arms gestured wildly at the human machinery. "They're doing this with pure magnetic confinement. It should have blown up the moment they started it." The human engineer escorting them, a calm woman named Minji Seo, smiled politely. "We've had a few centuries to work out the problems. Trial and error, mostly." "Trial and error?" Vorthak wanted to laugh. The magnetic field equations alone would require supercomputers to solve. Yet these humans had somehow figured it out through experimentation. And this shielding material? Vorthak scraped a sample from the reactor housing. His scanner couldn't identify the composition. "What is this made from?" "Carbon nanotubes woven with metallic hydrogen," Minji replied casually. "We compress hydrogen until it becomes metallic, then weave it into carbon structures. Makes excellent radiation shielding." Vorthak's blood went cold. Metallic hydrogen was theoretical. The Council's best scientists had been trying to create stable metallic hydrogen for decades. These humans talked about it like it was common construction material. Meanwhile, in the weapons bay, tactical specialist Gorvek was having his own crisis of understanding. The human weapons looked crude, simple kinetic railguns and basic laser arrays. Nothing that should worry a modern warship. "Excuse me," he said to Lieutenant Minho Park, the human tactical officer showing him around. "These appear to be very basic weapon systems." Minho nodded. "They are. We prefer reliable technology for long missions. Nothing fancy that might break down when you're years from the nearest repair facility." "But surely you have more advanced weapons on your homeworld?" "Oh, sure," Minho said with a shrug. "These are just what we could fit on an exploration ship. We had to save space for supplies and scientific equipment." Gorvek felt a chill run through his exoskeleton. If these were their basic weapons, what did their military ships carry? Back on the command deck, Admiral Korvac was growing frustrated with the humans' casual attitude toward their technology. Every system his engineers examined was somehow more advanced than it appeared, yet the humans acted like it was nothing special. "Captain Kim," he said finally, "my engineers are having difficulty understanding your ship's capabilities. Perhaps you could demonstrate some of your systems." Captain Kim exchanged glances with his bridge crew. "What kind of demonstration did you have in mind, Admiral?" "Your sensor arrays, perhaps. Show us their range and accuracy." Kim nodded to his tactical officer. "Minho, run a standard sensor sweep. Full spectrum analysis." Lieutenant Park's fingers danced over his console. Immediately, every Council ship's communication system lit up with incoming data streams. Detailed technical specifications, crew complements, weapon configurations, even the personal files of senior officers. "Sir," reported the communications officer aboard Admiral Korvac's flagship, "they're transmitting our complete technical specifications back to us. How is that possible?" The Admiral stared at his displays in disbelief. "Our ships are shielded." "Against active scanning." Captain Kim's voice came over the comm channel. "Your passive emissions are quite informative, Admiral. Heat signatures, electromagnetic leakage, quantum field fluctuations. We can determine most specifications just by watching how your ships move through space." But the real shock came next. Warning alarms began sounding on every Council vessel as their defensive systems detected targeting lasers painting their hulls, not from one or two locations, but from dozens of points on the human ship. 12. "Ships locked," reported Lieutenant Park calmly. "Point Defense Network is tracking all vessels, including the 3 scout ships positioned outside our supposed sensor range." Admiral Korvac felt his heart skip a beat. Those scout ships were 50,000 kilometers away using full stealth systems. The humans shouldn't even know they existed. "How?" he whispered. "Gravitational disturbances," explained Park. "Your ships have mass. Mass creates gravitational fields. We track the gravitational signatures." The targeting lasted exactly 3 seconds before shutting down. In that brief time, the human ship had acquired firing solutions for every Council vessel in the area, calculated their probable evasive maneuvers, and determined the optimal attack vectors. "Processing time was 0.3 seconds, Park added helpfully. "Our computers aren't quantum-based like yours, so they work a bit differently. We had to develop very efficient algorithms. The Council's quantum computers, with their ability to process multiple realities simultaneously, had been outperformed by human digital processors using pure mathematics." Admiral Korvac realized they were dealing with a completely different approach to technology. Where Council species had developed quantum mechanics and exotic matter manipulation, humans had perfected classical physics and engineering to impossible degrees. "Captain Kim," he said carefully, "is the defiant representative of your fleets." "Capabilities?" Kim smiled. "The Defiant is an exploration vessel, Admiral. We built her using reliable, proven technology for long-range missions. Nothing experimental or cutting-edge. And your military vessels, well, those incorporate everything we've learned from our recent conflicts. The resource wars taught us a lot about efficiency. The Martian rebellion showed us the importance of redundant systems." Kim paused. "But I'm sure those details aren't relevant to peaceful first contact." Lieutenant Park leaned over to whisper something to his captain. Kim nodded and turned back to the communication screen. "Admiral, my tactical officer informs me that your fleet formation has a 17% vulnerability in the lower port quadrant. Your heavy cruisers are protecting each other's flanks, but they've left a gap that could be exploited by a fast-moving vessel with sufficient firepower." He said it like he was pointing out a minor housekeeping issue. Admiral Korvac stared at the tactical display. Park was right. It was a flaw so subtle that the Council's own tactical computers hadn't detected it. These humans weren't just technologically different. They were strategically terrifying. The emergency Council session began at dawn on Velthara Prime, the capital world of the Galactic Council. Representatives from 47 species gathered in the Great Chamber, their various forms of communication creating a symphony of clicks, whistles, and electromagnetic pulses. Councillor Threnk, the Veltar representative, activated the central hologram display. "We need to discuss the human situation. Our preliminary analysis of their homeworld is concerning." The hologram showed a blue-green planet spinning slowly in space. It looked peaceful enough, but the data streaming alongside painted a different picture. "Earth is classified as a Class 12 death world," announced Dr. Vexler, the Council's chief xenobiologist. His spider-like form clicked nervously as he manipulated the data displays. "Only 17 species in our records have ever evolved on worlds this hostile." Murmurs of concern rippled through the chamber. Class 12 worlds were rare, planets so dangerous that most species would consider them uninhabitable even with advanced technology. "Explain," demanded Councillor Zeph, her crystalline form chiming with each word. Dr. Vexler highlighted different regions of Earth. "Observe. Massive temperature variations from -40 degrees to +50 degrees Celsius. Seismic activity that regularly destroys entire regions. Atmospheric storms with wind speeds exceeding 300 kilometers per hour." The hologram zoomed in on Earth's oceans. 90% of their world is covered in toxic dihydrogen monoxide. Most of their land masses are unsuitable for habitation due to extreme cold, heat, or geological instability. That's not the worst part, added behavioral specialist Quinara. Look at their fauna. New images appeared. Massive predators with razor-sharp teeth, tiny organisms that could kill with a single bite, plants that could dissolve flesh on contact. Their homeworld is actively trying to kill them, Quinara continued, every day, for millions of years. And yet they not only survived, they thrived. Councillor Threnk studied the data with growing unease. What does this tell us about their psychology? We interviewed Dr. Su-Young Lee, their xenobiologist, replied Quinara. She explained their survival strategy. They call it adaptive paranoia, the assumption that any situation could become lethal without warning. The chamber fell silent as the implications sank in. This explains their technology, Dr. Wexler added. Every system on their ship has multiple backups. Their fusion reactor has 17 different safety protocols. Their life support can function even if 60% of it fails. It's not just their technology, Quinara interrupted. It's their people. She activated a new display showing the Defiant's crew roster. Every human aboard that ship is cross-trained in at least 3 different specialties. Their engineer, Hyunwoo Choi, can perform complex medical procedures. Their communications officer, Ji-Yeon Nam, understands weapons systems better than most of our tactical specialists. Councillor Zeph's crystalline form flickered with agitation. Why would they need such extensive cross-training? Because on their world, specialists die, Quinara explained grimly. If your medic gets eaten by a predator, someone else needs to know medicine. If your engineer falls into a lava pit, someone else has to fix the machines. Humans learned long ago that specialization is a luxury they couldn't afford. The discussion was interrupted by Admiral Korvac's emergency transmission from the Outer Rim. His 4 eyes showed clear signs of stress as he appeared in hologram form. Councillors, we need to discuss the humans' military history. Captain Kim mentioned something called the Resource Wars and the Martian Rebellion. We've been analyzing the implications. What did you discover? Asked Councillor Threnk. They've been fighting interplanetary wars for decades, Admiral Korvac replied. According to Captain Kim, the Resource Wars lasted 18 years. 18 years of continuous combat across multiple star systems. The chamber erupted in concerned chatter. Most council conflicts were resolved within months, sometimes weeks. The Martian Rebellion was worse, the Admiral continued. A 13-year conflict where human colonists fought against Earth's government using improvised weapons and guerrilla tactics. They learned to fight extended campaigns with minimal supplies, in hostile environments, against superior forces. Dr. Vexelar's appendages twitched nervously. They've been practicing warfare on an interplanetary scale. Not practicing, Admiral, Korvac corrected. Living it. These aren't theoretical exercises. They've spent generations fighting wars that would have destroyed most civilizations. Councillor Threnk activated his private communication channel to speak with Admiral Korvac. Admiral, what's your assessment of their capabilities? Councillor, I've commanded fleets for 3 centuries. I've never encountered anything like this. Their single exploration ship carries enough firepower to cripple a battle group. But more concerning is their strategic thinking. The Admiral paused, collecting his thoughts. During our encounter, Lieutenant Park, their tactical officer, identified weaknesses in our formation that our own computers missed. Not after hours of analysis, but immediately upon seeing us. How is that possible? They think differently than we do. Where we see ship formations, they see opportunities for attack. Where we see diplomatic first contact, they see potential. Threats to neutralize. It's not malicious, it's instinctive. Back in the council chamber, the representatives were beginning to understand the magnitude of their situation. Let me summarize, said Councillor Zeph. We're dealing with a species that evolved on a death world, survived by assuming everything was trying to kill them, fought interplanetary wars for decades, and considers their exploration vessel to be basic technology. That's correct, confirmed Dr. Vexler. And they've been watching us for years without us knowing. Also correct. Councillor Threnk looked around the chamber at his fellow representatives. Some species communicated through color changes, others through chemical releases. All of them were showing signs of deep concern. The question before us, he announced, is whether we're looking at potential allies or the greatest threat the galaxy has ever known. From his ship at the edge of Council space, Admiral Korvac transmitted one final observation. Counselors, there's something else. When I asked Captain Kim about their military vessels, he mentioned that the Defiant uses reliable, proven technology for long missions. He implied that their newer ships are more advanced. The Admiral's image flickered with static as he continued. If this is their old technology, what are their new ships capable of? The emergency session continued for 6 more hours, but no one had an answer to that question. And that perhaps was the most terrifying thing of all. The formal meeting took place in Admiral Korvac's conference room, a sterile chamber designed to accommodate multiple alien physiologies. Captain Kim sat across from the Admiral, flanked by his senior officers. What should have been a simple diplomatic exchange was about to become the most unsettling briefing in galactic history. Admiral Korvac, Captain Kim began, placing a data crystal on the table between them. I'm pleased to present humanity's formal application for membership in the Galactic Council. The Admiral's aide, a nervous Veltar named Kypex, reached for the crystal with one of his 4 arms. Standard application protocols require basic information about your species, population, and technological capabilities. Captain Kim smiled. I think you'll find our application quite comprehensive. Kypex inserted the crystal into the holographic display system. Immediately, the room filled with detailed star charts, population statistics, and technological specifications. But that wasn't what made Admiral Korvac's hearts skip a beat. The first file contained complete military assessments of every council. Species. Veltar Fleet Doctrine, read the file headers. Korthani Battle Tactics. Zilakian Trade Route Vulnerabilities. Political Structure Analysis. The Hegemony's Succession Crisis. How do you know about the succession crisis? Admiral Korvac demanded. That information is classified at the highest levels. Commander Seungmin Yu, a quiet human with observant eyes, leaned forward. We've been watching, Admiral, for quite some time. Watching from where? Navigator Yoonji Shin activated another section of the display. Star charts appeared, showing the local sector in 3 dimensions. Dozens of small markers blinked throughout the region, each one representing a human observation post. We established our first deep space monitoring station 47 years ago, Yoonji explained calmly. We now have 83 passive sensor arrays throughout this sector of the galaxy. Admiral Korvac studied the display in horror. The human observation posts were positioned at perfect vantage points, near major trade routes, outside patrol. Zones with clear lines of sight to important Council worlds. They'd been invisible to Council sensors for decades. These posts, he said slowly, how did you deploy them without our knowledge? Stealth probes launched from the outer rim, replied Hyunji. Each one about the size of a small asteroid covered in sensor-absorbing materials. They look like space debris to your scanning systems. Tactical analyst Jun-Ho Lee brought up another display. From these positions, we've observed and recorded over 12,000 Council fleet movements. We've analyzed your standard formations, response times, communication protocols, and tactical weaknesses. The hologram showed a detailed breakdown of Council military doctrine. Every standard formation was displayed alongside its vulnerabilities. Every communication frequency was listed with suggested jamming techniques. Every major fleet movement from the past decade was catalogued and analyzed. You've been spying on us for 50 years, Admiral Korvac said, his voice barely controlled. Observing, corrected Commander Yu. We needed to understand our neighbors before making contact. Surely you can appreciate the wisdom of that approach. Captain Kim gestured to another file. We've also prepared detailed proposals for mutual cooperation, trade agreements, technology exchanges, joint defense pacts. We believe humanity can contribute significantly to galactic prosperity. The trade proposals were sophisticated beyond anything the Council had seen from a new species. The humans understood galactic economics, resource distribution, manufacturing capabilities, and market demands. They knew which species needed what resources and exactly how to position themselves as essential partners. How do you know about the Korthani rare earth shortage? Asked Admiral Korvac. reading through the trade sections. That information was restricted to avoid market panic. We observed increased mining activity in the Korthani home system, explained Commander Yu. Combined with changes in their trade routes and diplomatic overtures to mineral-rich worlds, the conclusion was obvious. But it was the military cooperation proposals that truly frightened the Admiral. The humans offered joint training exercises, shared intelligence networks, and coordinated defense strategies. All of it demonstrated intimate knowledge of Council military capabilities and limitations. "You've analyzed our weaknesses," Admiral Korvac stated. "We've analyzed everything," Junho Lee replied matter-of-factly. "Your fleet formations leave gaps in sectors 7 and 12. Your communication systems are vulnerable to quantum interference. Your supply lines are overextended in the Outer Rim territories." He brought up tactical displays showing exactly how these weaknesses could be exploited. "We're sharing this information as a gesture of good faith. These vulnerabilities could be dangerous if hostile forces discovered them." The unspoken message was clear. Hostile forces had already discovered them. Commander Yu activated the final section of their presentation. "We've also prepared contingency plans for various scenarios: trade disputes, territorial conflicts, external threats to galactic security." The contingency plans were terrifyingly thorough. Military responses to every conceivable situation, detailed analysis of each species' likely reactions, and strategic recommendations for maintaining galactic stability. It was the work of the intelligence apparatus that had been studying the galaxy for generations. "There's one more thing," Captain Kim said quietly. He activated a new display showing humanity's current territorial holdings. "These are our established colonies and outposts." The map revealed a network of human settlements throughout the sector, not just the observation posts, but actual colonies with populations, industries, and defensive installations. Humanity hadn't just been watching, they'd been expanding. 43 colony worlds, noted Navigator Shin, population approaching 2 billion, full industrial capacity, including shipyards and military production facilities. Admiral Korvac stared at the display in disbelief. "You've colonized 43 worlds without anyone noticing. Remote systems mostly," Captain Kim explained. "Places that weren't claimed by Council species. We've been very careful to avoid territorial disputes." Until now, Kim agreed. "We felt it was time to introduce ourselves properly." The meeting continued for hours, as the humans presented more intelligence data, more strategic analyses, more evidence of their comprehensive preparation for this moment. They knew everything about the galactic community they were asking to join. As the session concluded, Admiral Korvac realized the true scope of what was happening. This wasn't first contact with a primitive species stumbling into galactic civilization. This was a carefully orchestrated diplomatic mission by a power that had been preparing for this moment for decades. The humans weren't asking to join galactic civilization. They were announcing that they'd already become part of it, whether the Council recognized it or not. "One final question," Admiral Korvac said as the humans prepared to leave. "All of this intelligence gathering, this preparation, what if we had proven hostile? What if we had attacked your ship?" Captain Kim paused at the door, his expression serious. "Then this would have been a very different conversation, Admiral, but we were fairly confident it wouldn't come to that." "How could you be confident, Commander?" Yu answered quietly. "Because we know you, Admiral Korvac. We've been watching you for 8 years. We know you're a reasonable being who values peace over conflict." As the humans departed, Admiral Korvac realized they'd been studying him personally, just as they'd studied everything else. The galaxy had changed forever, and the Council was only now beginning to understand how completely they'd been outmaneuvered. The emergency Council session had been running for 18 hours straight. Representatives from 47 species filled the great chamber on Velthara Prime, their various forms of communication creating a constant buzz of activity. Never in galactic history had a single species caused such upheaval in the established order. Councillor Threnk stood at the center podium, his 4 arms gesturing wildly as he addressed the assembly. "We face a decision that will define the next millennium of galactic civilization. Do we accept humanity into the Council, or do we treat them as a potential threat?" "They are already a threat," hissed Councillor Vexara, her serpentine form coiled with tension. "They've been spying on us for decades. They know our weaknesses better than we do." "But they're offering to share that knowledge," countered Councillor Quinn, his crystalline structure chiming with each word. "Their intelligence. Reports could help us strengthen our defenses." The debate had been raging for hours. Some species saw the humans as dangerous infiltrators who had violated galactic sovereignty. Others viewed them as potential allies with valuable capabilities. All agreed that ignoring them was no longer an option. Meanwhile, aboard the Defiant, Captain Kim was preparing for departure. The formal diplomatic presentation was complete, but he had one final gesture to make. "Da-hyun," he called to his science officer, "prepare the full technical database for transmission." Science Officer Da-hyun Ko looked up from her console with surprise. "Sir, that's every technological advancement we've made in the past 2 centuries. Our metallurgy, energy systems, computational theory, everything." "I know what it is," Kim replied calmly. "Transmit it to the Council's scientific database." "But Captain, that information could be used against us." Kim smiled. "That's the point. We're not showing them our secrets because we're surrendering. We're showing them because we want them to understand what they're dealing with." The transmission began, and within minutes, Council scientists across the galaxy were staring at their screens in disbelief. The Human Technological Database contained innovations that solved problems the Council had been working on for centuries. Dr. Vexler, the Council's chief xenobiologist, found himself reading about biological life support systems that could function in environments previously thought uninhabitable. The humans had solved atmospheric recycling challenges by studying their own harsh homeworld ecosystems. Chief Engineer Gorvak discovered metallurgical techniques that could create materials stronger than anything in current galactic production. The humans had developed these methods through necessity. Building structures that could survive their planet's extreme weather required innovations that more comfortable species had never needed to develop. Most shocking were the computational advances. While Council species had focused on quantum processing, humans had pushed digital computation to impossible levels of efficiency. Their algorithms could solve complex problems using a fraction of the processing power required by quantum systems. "This is impossible," muttered Dr. Kilthak, the Council's leading physicist, as he reviewed human energy manipulation techniques. "They're achieving 98% fusion efficiency with magnetic containment. Our quantum-assisted systems barely reach 85%. The transmission continued for hours. Advanced space drive designs, revolutionary weapons technology, breakthrough medical techniques, all developed by a species the Council had considered primitive just days earlier, but the real message wasn't in the technical specifications. It was in the casual way the humans shared their most advanced secrets. They weren't afraid of giving the Council access to their technology because they were confident in their ability to stay ahead of any potential threat. As the Defiant prepared to depart, Captain Kim opened a final communication channel to Admiral Korvac. "Admiral, it's been a pleasure meeting you and your people. We look forward to the Council's decision regarding our membership application." Admiral Korvac's voice carried a mix of respect and wariness. "Captain Kim, I must ask, what happens if the Council rejects your application?" Kim's expression remained pleasant, but his words carried unmistakable weight. "Admiral, humanity has survived ice ages, supervolcanic eruptions, asteroid impacts, and countless wars. We've turned survival itself into an art form. We hope the Council will choose cooperation, but we're prepared for any outcome." The message was clear without being threatening. Humans wanted partnership, but they would defend themselves with the same ruthless efficiency they'd used to survive their deadly homeworld. "We understand each other," Admiral Korvac replied quietly. "I believe we do." Communications Officer Jion Nam transmitted one final data package to the Council's navigation systems. "Admiral, these are the coordinates for our nearest colony, worlds. We thought you might want to establish diplomatic contact with our other settlements." The star chart revealed the true scope of human expansion. 43 colony worlds, each one positioned strategically throughout the sector. Military installations, industrial centers, research facilities, an entire civilization that had been growing in the shadows while the Council remained unaware. Admiral Korvac studied the coordinates with growing understanding. The humans hadn't just been observing galactic civilization. They'd been building their own parallel civilization alongside it. "Captain Kim," he said finally, "how long have you been planning this moment?" "Planning is too strong a word, Admiral. We've been preparing." There's a difference. As the Defiant powered up its engines and began moving away from the Council fleet, Admiral Korvac transmitted a private message to the emergency session on Velthera Prime. "Councillors, I must report that we are not dealing with a first contact situation. We are negotiating with an established galactic power that chose to reveal itself to us." The chamber fell silent as the implications sank in. "For the first time in our history," Admiral Korvac continued, "the Council is not welcoming a new member species into galactic civilization. We are acknowledging the existence of a civilization that has been among us all along." Councillor Threnk's voice carried a note of resignation. "What do you recommend, Admiral?" "I recommend we accept their application immediately, not because we have to, but because refusing would be the first step toward a conflict we are not prepared to fight." "And if they prove hostile?" Admiral Korvac watched the Defiant disappear into the darkness between stars. "Then we pray they meant what they said about seeking partnership. Because if humanity decides we're a threat to their survival, we'll discover just how creative a species can become when their existence depends on it." The vote was unanimous. For the first time in galactic history, the Council voted to accept a species not because they were impressed by their potential, but because they were terrified of their capabilities. Humanity had arrived on the galactic stage, and nothing would ever be the same. As news of the decision spread throughout Council space, one fact became clear to every species in the galaxy. The age of human isolation was over. The age of human influence was just beginning.